and welcome to the round 4 summary of the Brew Bowl. This has been our middle round, so we're now sort of over the halfway point in the little test campaign. And so far, I've learned quite a bit about how to do this. We've made some changes to the Powered by the Apocalypse rules. I've even been discussing some potential changes to a sort of, I guess, a continuation of this on AP Gaming Reel's Discord channel. So if you are just watching this on YouTube and you want to participate in the development of this series as it goes into a potential second season, or I guess a real season, given this is sort of a playtest season, then do jump over to AP Gaming Reel's YouTube channel, where you can find a link to his Discord and join the Blood Bowl 7's chat there. Or if you're already involved, then please feel free to give us ideas what you'd like to see, what you don't want to see, what can be some cool novelty rounds coming up. But I have got some plans for that going forward. But in the meantime, let's talk about where things are at the end of round 4 of the Brew Bowl. And I'm going to start by going over to the one game that you didn't see, which was the NPC team game. And that was the Slow Thicket Raiders against the Ice Peak Jarls. So here we had the Jarls receiving in the first turn. Straight away, one of their linemen went for it to try and get in to do an early block, fell over and seriously injured himself, knocking him out for the following round and sort of leaving them in a bit of a bad way. But the new Valkyrie, did manage to score a touchdown in the second turn. From there, it became a little bit of a grind. So we managed to get off a Treeman throw of a halfling player and run in for a touchdown in turn 4. That didn't count as a conversion for the Treeman because it wasn't an accurate throw, but the halfling still landed safely and dropped the touchdown in. But from that point, it was pretty much all downhill for the halflings, because the Norse team just started delivering KOs, stuns, a couple of badly hurts, no one else seriously injured, no one going out for the next game. But by the start of the second half, the Raiders only had 5 active players left, which is, not bad given they started with, I think, 10 active players at the start of the round, which just made it too hard for them to stop the Valkyrie getting past with her 7 movement. So she scored again in turn 10. Then we had a kickoff event of timeout, which gave us an extra turn and let her score again in what was technically turn 11, because turn 10 was played twice. So the end result here was a 3-1 victory for the Jarls over the Raiders. And looking now at where that puts the actual standings, the Drakes are still comfortably in front. I wouldn't say comfortably, but they are in front on 10 total championship points. The Reavers could have matched that in the game against the Slavers, but with a draw, that left them 2 points shy. Then we've got the Ogres moved up into 3rd spot with their 2nd win. The Slavers technically tied with the Jarls except for the goal difference, so that puts the Slavers into 4th spot, knocks the Jarls back into 5th. And then we've got the Hammerers, which is Spoon's team, and the NPC team, the Griffins, both sitting on equal 6 with 3 points at -1, and the Halflings way down the bottom on 3 points at -6. Technically speaking, any team here could still win. We'll get to rank 1 by the end. There's still 3 rounds to play, so there's still 9 championship points. So even the teams on 3 could get to 12, and every possibility the Drakes could lose all 3 games and be stuck on 10. There's nobody is locked out of any position just yet. But I'd say by the end of round 5, we're going to have some clear ideas about who can or can't realistically get into the playoffs. Let's go through the teams. First off, the Black Iron Slavers, the Chaos Dwarf team. Rough game for them. They got an early score. They could have held potentially the Black Hawks from scoring their first touchdown, but a double one from a reroll by their mercenary meant that the Black Hawks would walk in a touchdown. And on top of that, their one remaining Bull Centaur tower was drafted away at the end of the round, or at the end of the game. That was because that player had 2 skills. That's the only player so far that has been given 2 skills, which means they'd leave on a 1 or a 2. I have to admit, I think that Arthur probably didn't realize that was a potential repercussion of giving a player a 2nd skill. And to be honest, I don't want to remove player drafting from the game if we go to a second season, but I do want to refine the rules somewhat and give the players a bit more control over when someone leaves, who leaves, and potentially look at maybe some reimbursement for that. But I mean, the drafting mechanic is all about keeping sevens teams at like a relatively low level. And look, some of the teams that have dropped down into low team values have been enjoying using some of the inducements, like the mercenary players as well. So Tank, the new Counselor blocker, picked up Pile Driver, lets him go prone after doing a block in order to get a free foul in. That foul can still cause a send off though, so it is something of a risk. But that is one option for that player. That leaves AP with 80,000, not enough to buy a replacement Bull Centaur. I think they come in at about 130. 130 they are, yeah. So I think he's probably going to save for that one, rather than putting in another Cast Warp blocker. I guess we'll see. He's got some options available to him, but he has got 7 plays, can play with a full 7-player game now that Malibu's back from the miss next game. All right, Spoon's Dwarf team. Once again, another player drafted away, Brookie Smithson, who had pro. We lost him at the end of the game. He did decide to replace him straight away with a new lineman, JJ Watson, which means that the extra skill he got on Tormund Thomason, Wrestle, which was identical to what Barry Sanderson had, the plus 10,000 for that, minus the 10,000 for losing Brookie's pro skill, meant that his actual team rating didn't change. He's got some money left over, can't afford another player right now, but he may look at something like another player or apothecary going forward, but he has still got right now 7 players and can field a full team. The High Peaks Mountaineers managed to avoid any players dying, or leaving for that matter, during this game. So yeah, I mean, Lawson is really having a lot of fun with this team. There was some discussion about it in the round, in the third game of this round by AP and Fohammer. But yeah, no, he's really using an ogre team as they're meant to be used. He's causing injuries. He is getting, with his low team value, he's bringing in mercenaries and other inducements. So, you know, a really fun opponent to go against, I think. He has decided to replace his runt punter, which I can only suspect next game will probably try and give leader to again, because the leader reroll is a great way to get a reroll in sevens. But yeah, that has lifted his team value up a little bit, which means he won't get to hire as many mercenaries in his next game. Also, his number 10 lineman, Noblar, picked up Fend. Another great skill. Well, I mean, Nat already had Fend, the number 1 player. But yeah, good skill for these guys who have both sidestep and Titchy. Gives them some real control of where they go. And with Fend, they can avoid being followed. Onto the Death River Reavers. Not much change here, really. So Fohammer decided to give a skill to Durlake Dwarf Splitter. He picked up Thick Skull. Probably not a great skill, given that they've already got 10 plus armor. It just means that they won't be knocked out on a roll of an 8. They'll be knocked out on a 9. Yeah, there are plenty of other good strength skills that player could have gotten. So that's just the way things work. But no players left. And his team is sitting at the highest team rating overall right now. Actually, I think maybe the Drakes are lower, but they will get a journeyman, so we'll come back to that. But right now, for the actual team on paper, the Death River Reavers is the most powerful team. The Halflings, not a great game for them, given that one of their treemen was drafted away at the end of the game. So a big cost there. Thankfully, they had enough treasury left over to go and buy straight away a replacement. They are up against, I think, the Dwarves next game. They've got a pretty full team. You know, they've still got 9 players there. So, you know, they've got a bench still. They've still got the 2 treemen. One of the new treemen, or so the old treeman, picked up Break Tackle, which, you know, if I need to move a treeman around, I guess it gives a bit more flexibility. But yeah, I think that probably what will happen now is they'll save their money to boost inducements where required to try and get them some much needed wins going into the end of the season. But I do honestly think that the Halfling team has some really strong opponents, and the chance of them making it the top 4 is almost non-existent. So it's just a bit of fun before they finish up their season. All right, on to the Wood Elves, which are still leading the table. Here they had their thrower drafted away, and they did not have enough money left over to replace that thrower. I think the throwers come in at 85 or 95,000, but they just didn't quite have enough to replace that thrower. So I made the call here to keep the treasury and only go on with 6 players. So even though their team rating is 660, by the time they add in the 70k cost of a journeyman, that'll put them on to 740, which means that in the game coming up against the Reavers, there will be a minor amount of inducements going Fohammer's way. So here we also got one of the linemen took a random agility skill and got dodge, which is probably one of the best ones I could have hoped for an agility roll on a lineman. But yeah, no other major changes here, and we're looking forward to see how they do in this round's match, because it could be a match that sort of shows us what the final could look like. Onto the Icehorn Peak Jarls, the Norse team. They had a win here, as we described earlier, although they had their lineman Vitzerk, who managed to seriously injure himself on the first turn of the game. And their Valkyrie, having replaced the one that was drafted, ran in 3 touchdowns during the game, so I certainly gave her the skill, and she picked up safe pair of hands. Look, a skill that the Wood Elves have as well. It lets you, if you're knocked down, you can decide into what empty square you place the ball around you. You can't pass it off to another player, but you can decide where it lands after you go down, which could potentially put it into some tackle zones, for example, and eliminate your opponents or reduce your opponent's chance to pick it up. So, look, I think the Jarls are doing quite well. I think that they are one of the teams that could potentially claw their way back into the top 4. But we'll have to see how we go. And then finally, the Talabaclan Griffins, the Imperial Nobility team. So, let's see here, we had one of their players was missing a game, so they're all back for next, well, they were all back for next game, but then their new blitzer, who picked up Leap, also got a miss next game, so they'll be going into the next round with only 7 players after I decide to spend some money and buy an extra lineman. So when all their players are back, they will have a bench, but they're still no apothecary. They've had only, I think, a single win. So I don't know. Like I think I mentioned it during the game that they were in this week, that I've read that the Imperial Nobility team are a great team if you know how to play them. I don't know how to play them, or at least I'm sort of winging it. So I think that once again, I don't know how well they'll do. I think they're sitting only on 3 points, along with the Hammerers and the Raiders, and with some strong opponents coming up. I don't think we'll see them in the finals, but as I mentioned before, it is still technically possible. Looking at our leaderboard, not a lot of changes here. We saw a couple of pointless throws from the Griffins thrower during their game that didn't get touchdowns but did get him conversions, letting him go into a clear first place on the passes table, especially because the other 2 passes on the table have both been drafted away. Midi has pulled ahead with an extra 2 touchdowns this week, giving her a clear lead in the touchdowns with 6 altogether. And we've still got the departed blitzer from the Griffins and the departed Barry, the runner from the Dwarves as well, still sitting on that leaderboard. Most deadly, the War Dancer moved into a clear first place with an extra casualty, putting him on 3. Then we've got a glutted players sitting on 2. MVPs, as I mentioned in previous rounds, it's going to be 1 for almost everyone, because most people only give a player 1 skill. AP did give 2 skills to Tower, putting him up the front. But of course, immediately the following game, he was drafted away. So I don't know if we'll see that again in where people can give it to somebody else. All right, this coming week, the Slavers will be taking on the Griffins. So Chaos Dwarves versus Nobility. Don't know really how this one will go. As I mentioned, Nobility is not a team I'm overly familiar with and how to play, but AP at the same point is missing both Bull Centaurs, so he's only got his speed 4 Dwarves and his speed 6 Hobgoblins who have no skills. He may have enough money to pay for a mercenary, but he might need to dip into his funds if he wants to give that mercenary any real skills as well. So I guess it's going to depend upon how badly he wants to win this game as to whether he'll commit his own funds or just use the petty cash. What is sure to be the biggest game of the round will be the Drakes versus the Reavers. So first place versus second place. Whoever wins that will be in a clear first place, because the Drakes would, if they win, they'd go to 13. If the Reavers win, they'd go to 11, which in either case is not assailable by any other team. So it's going to be the match to watch. We'll set up, I think, what could be a preview of the grand final game. Then we've got the Jarls, the Norse team, versus the Ogre team, the Mountaineers. Lawson's got 2 Ogres back, so I think he could probably have some good control. It'll just come down to whether his Noblars can do much with the Valkyrie. The Valkyrie also has Dauntless, so could potentially push her way through an Ogre wall if necessary, but yeah, it's going to be hard to say how that one goes. And then finally, the Raiders versus the Hammerers. Despite Spoon not having a win yet, 3 draws, he knows how to play, he knows how to get touchdowns. I think that I'd be giving this one to Spoon pretty clearly with the Dwarves, but even though, depending on what I spend the inducements on with the Halflings, they could dip well into their funds potentially and bring a chef in, give themselves some re-rolls. Not that Spoon has any to lose, but the re-rolls for the Halflings gives them some more flexibility. But once again, I've just seen in recent rounds those Treemen get rooted, they get locked down, and there's just nothing you can do about it. So that could give Spoon the flexibility he needs to get his runner past and get some easy touchdowns. So I'm liking so this round has all players versus NPC teams, and I'm liking the players definitely in 3 of the games, the Slavers, the Mountaineers, and the Hammerers. It's hard to say how the Wood Elf team versus the Blackhawk team will do, given that Lawson's really good with playing that team. But he has admitted by his own admission he struggles with speed teams, and that's certainly what the Wood Elves are. But if he can get some early knockouts, some early injuries, maybe he can make them so they just don't have the people on the field to score. But the other thing is going to be there'll be a novelty this round, which I'm not revealing just yet. But it will be it's a detriment, but it's a detriment to both teams equally. And you can manage it in such a way that it is more detrimental to your opponent than yourself if you do it, if you attend to it smartly. But honestly, the first player that plays the first game, will get to see how it happens when it happens, and they'll have to figure it out as they go, because it's a rule which doesn't exist in Blood Bowl that I've written specifically for this little campaign. So hopefully something a bit of fun for players to get their teeth into, and to give them some new challenges on how to play and how to beat Blood Bowl. So yeah, that's it for the round 4 results. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you are still keen to watch some more, because we'll be back this week with 4 games of Blood Bowl, with each player playing an NPC team before we go into the final 2 rounds. So please do join us for more games, and thank you as always for watching.